Welcome to Career Tipper Podcast, hosted by Michelle Beatty. The Career Tipper Podcast is a motivational resource that shares career and entrepreneurial tips by industry experts that will help amazing people evolve to their professional best. And now your host, Michelle Beatty.
Episode 26 of the Career Tipper Podcast features Irene Tyndale. Irene is an event planner and logistical designer. She is the owner and chief event officer at Irene Tyndale Events. For over 20 years, Irene worked at several hotels as the coordinator and event manager, where she developed a passion for weddings. Always full of the entrepreneurial spirit, in 2012, she founded Irene Tyndale Events, and in 2016, she became the owner of Bridal Ball Atlanta. Those closest to her call her Grace Under Fire. She always manages well under pressure and pairs calm with a sense of urgency to get things done. Irene is passionate about planning and serving others. Irene's going to share her journey to maximizing relationships to build an impactful brand that creates cherished memories for families. I'm your host, Michelle Beatty, career confidence coach and author. Irene, welcome to the Career Tipper Podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on here today.
Thank you. I love your story of how you got to this point in your career, so I'm excited for you to share. When did you know that you wanted wedding planning to be your career focus?
It kind of found me. It's funny because people ask me that all the time, and I say event planning and wedding planning kind of found me. When I was in college, I started volunteering, Student Government Association, campus ambassador. I did Latin American Student Association, and on and on and on, and kind of got the event planning bug because we used to volunteer with the different chambers of commerce. And the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, I actually got one of my mentors off of there, from volunteering there, and she did events. And it's funny because she had a PR firm. So I thought for a long time that I was going to go into public relations and that had to do with the events, but I quickly learned that's not how it goes. And so that's how the event planning bug happened. And then we had a really, really good friend of ours go visit her boyfriend at the time, and came back married. And I was like, what do you mean you're married? She's like, we eloped. And I said, well, good Catholic schoolgirls do not elope. Like, who does that? Like, no, we don't do that. And so she goes, nope, I eloped. And so, of course, we were early 20s and all shocked that she did that. And the moms got involved and said that they had to renew their vows or have an actual wedding with everybody present. And she asked me to help with the wedding. And I was like, I never planned a wedding. And this is before, we had just started having Yahoo, and AOL was kind of popular. So we had the internet. I sound so old, but this was like mid to late 90s. And so there was no tutorials out there on how to be a wedding planner. I didn't even know that was actual title. And I was like, what? She's like, it's an event. And I was like, no, it's not. She's like, it's just another event with a girl in a white dress. I was like, okay. And so she begged me, and I helped as much as I could to help with the country club and making sure she had her hair done and just all this stuff. So kind of maid of honor / planner. And that kind of started the bug. And then I did a couple of other friends' weddings. And then I did a wedding in Delaware for some really good friends of ours. And my husband at the time was my boyfriend, said, you're in your element. This is like, he watched me the entire day. And he's like, this is your world. So it found me. Wedding planning kind of found me. Event planning in general, but definitely wedding planning found me.
I love that story. I love that. It's like, I wasn't looking for it. It came and locked me up in the head.
Yes.
Well, what was your professional development ramp-up process to committing to launch Irene Tyndale Events?
And again, that was the situation. I was, I always knew that I wanted to be the boss and the girl in the corner office. I always had those aspirations of being CEO or director or something like that of wherever I worked at. I never really initially thought, hey, I'm going to be an owner of a business. I always just thought I was going to be the boss. I'm the oldest. I'm the eldest. So I've always had that bossy gene in me. So I was like, I'm going to be a boss some day. And I was working for a boutique hotel here in Atlanta. And a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving, they released me. Or like my husband says, God released me to do what I was supposed to do. So that happens. And of course, you have the ugly cry moment and you get upset because you're like, we have children now and we have a bigger house and bills to pay and the holidays are around the corner. And after I had my pity party, my husband said, you're going to start a business. And I was like, I am not starting a business. Right after the holidays, I will have a job because it's hotels. I can go work at another hotel. And he's like, no, take the holidays, think about it. But I feel like you need to start a business. And right after the new year, like May the second week of January, one of the brides that I had booked at the hotel, who had sold her wedding at the hotel, reached out to me because she wasn't happy on she found out and wasn't happy. And she reached out to me, Googled me, found me on Instagram, Facebook, and said, call me right now. And I was like, oh, okay. So I called her, I got her number, I called her, and she was like, I said, well, I just started my Facebook page, Irene Tyndale Events. I'm not, I don't have a contract. I don't even have a website. I don't have anything. And she was like, you know how to plan weddings, right? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, meet me at such and such place at such and such time on Saturday, and I'll have a check for you. And she was my first client. And so that was 5 years ago, right? Exactly. It's like one of those exciting things. And my second client was another bride who, booked at the hotel because of the service that we were providing her. And she was finishing up her PhD at Emory. And so she was like, I don't have time to be dealing with this person. I don't know who this new lady is. She doesn't know me. And again, found out what happened at the hotel, Googled me, found me, and hired me. Like, it was like, here. She mailed me a check. We didn't even meet. So I had these two ladies who believed in me. In my first year in business, I think I might have had 3 to 5 weddings. And so I just say that and initially I was like, oh, it's just planning weddings, not necessarily thinking about the business side of everything. So the development came later, like much later. So I would say year 3, continuously grew every year. And then year 3, it grew bigger because I pulled somebody in to help me. So I went from actually turning down business, and my husband heard me tell somebody, oh, I'm not available that day. He was like, I hung up, and he's like, you need to find somebody to train and to bring up to be a second you. And so year 3 is when I started taking it serious, and developing myself as a CEO and and it's taking the business to the next level and changing my mindset. So for the past 2 years, I've worked with a business strategist. I went to conferences. I did a business coach. So I've done a lot of stuff to get me to this fifth year that was just almost 6 years, and to get us moving forward. So I would say I had the skills of being a planner, and I just needed to learn the skills of being a CEO and managing a business, which is 2 different things. I tell people all the time, it's like people who want to get married or have a wedding. It's like, do you want to have a wedding or do you want to have a marriage? And I've had both. I see that. I was like, if you just want to have a party, just throw a party, a $50,000 party. Don't add a vows to it. Just throw a party and call it a day. So that's the difference. Like, I had the skills of, 15, 20 years of event planning and wedding planning. I just didn't have the skills of being a boss and owning a company. And it's learned it.
I also wanted to know more about speaking with the knot.
Yes. So a few months ago, I have a really good relationship with, even whether I advertise with the local, whether on the Knot or local magazines or even national magazines, I still develop really good relationships and keep good relationships with those ladies. So whether I refer other people to them or whatever the case may be, I have a good relationship. So a few months ago, the Knot has the Knot Pro, which is for all the wedding professionals that are advertisers, and they open up these workshops and these conferences to non-advertisers as well. So a few months back, one of the girls, we have our 2 sales reps here in the South in Georgia are called Jessicas. They're both named Jessica, so we call them the Jessicas. So the Jessicas reached out to me and asked me if I would be on the panel as a wedding planner, kind of talking about, answering some questions. So that was fun because I got to tell my story a little bit, and then we talked about some of the questions were related to charging your wealth and the journey that it took to get here, because of the day and age that we live in, and wedding planning and event planning in general, but wedding planning is a low entry barrier. So you could literally start a wedding planning business from your desk or from your kitchen table. There, you don't need supplies, you don't need an inventory, you don't need, don't need a license, really, like, meaning you don't need like a certification. You can get a certification, but you don't need it. Some people you have to get a business license with your city or county and stuff like that, but it's really low entry. Like, it doesn't cost much. So you have a lot of people coming into the industry who, and some come in and do really well really quickly, and some don't.
I hear you. You. How did networking lead you to owning Bridal Ball Atlanta?
Well, Bridal Ball Atlanta has been around for 6 years, and I'm the third owner. And 6 years ago, a planner started the bridal show, and it's a boutique bridal show. So, anywhere between 30 and 40 vendors. We really, really curate each category. So we don't want it to be where the bride comes in and there's 10 photographers and 10 florists and 10. We kind of curate it to be 3 to 4 per categories. In some categories, it's just 1. So about, I would say, August of 2015, I started networking with, so the first owner sold it to another lady, and the second lady wasn't, she was from Miami, and she wasn't really part of the industry in the way that we all thought she would be a part of the industry. So I briefly met her at a networking event with the old owner, with the first owner. And a couple months later, one of my other friends, who also does a boutique bridal show, completely different than mine, said to me, she sold it. And I was like, who did she sell it to? I was like, when did that happen? So she's like, the lady that she was with at the networking event, she sold it to her. And she says, you should connect with Gail, because she is rebranding. And I think the new brand will fit your brand, and I was like, okay. She goes, also, the boutique bridal ball used to have a VIP confidential workshop for brides and grooms to come in and kind of get pointers from the planners and different vendors, and it would be beautifully decorated. They would come in for brunch before the show would start. And so I was like, okay. She's like, reach out to her, because I think you would be perfect to host her VIP workshop at the show, at her next show. And I was like, okay. So that was like one day. The next day, I went to a networking luncheon, and I ran into Gail, and she saw my name tag, and she said, I've been meaning to connect with you. And I said, okay, great. And so we chatted a little bit, exchanged business cards, and then we wind up sitting next to each other, because all the tables were filled. It's never coincidence. God knows what he does. And we wind up sitting next to each other and chatted some more. We were even whispering while the speaker was speaking, because it was SEO stuff that was way beyond all of our heads. He wasn't even speaking English, really. So we chatted, and she said, when I come back in town next week, let's have lunch. So met with her for lunch a few days later, and she's like, so we sat down, and she's like, I vetted you. And I was like, well, I have no idea who you are, but thanks. And so we talked, and she invited me to be the hostess of the VIP workshop, and I did such a phenomenal job. And it was great. It was beautiful. We had 88 people in there. We had to turn people away because we couldn't fit anybody else. We sold out the tickets, and other people were jealous because where it was located was all windows. So you could see how beautiful it was set up and all the fun that those brides were having. So she invited me to come back. That was in the fall of 2015. She invited me to come back and for the winter show. And I was like, sure, great. So August passes. It was in August. She goes away for a couple weeks after Labor Day because she was visiting her grandchildren. And we have lunch together. We talk about the winter show and all the great stuff and how the space she was reserving a bigger space for me so that we could have 50 couples in there. So I was like, yes, make it bigger. And I do a quick workshop called Organizing Your Wedding Brain. And I kind of give them tips, and the grooms love it because the groom's like, yes, she has wedding brain. So it's kind of, and it's geared to both of them, not just her. And so that was in September. And then in beginning of October, she called me and said, she sent me a message that said, I know you're getting ready for a wedding, but I really need to speak to you. And because I was helping her and I was kind of giving her pointers and connecting her with vendors and just networking with her and helping her kind of get acclimated into the Atlanta market. She called me and she was like, I have an opportunity to move full-time back to Miami with my family. And a job I just can't say no to, this job I can't say no to again. I want to sell you Bridal Ball. And initially I thought she was calling me just to say that she wanted me to run it for her. She's like, no, I want to sell it to you. And that's how I became the owner of that. So good reputation and just giving. I literally was offering her advice and working with her without expecting anything in return, really. It just wanted to be able the bride to have a good event. So that's how I love it. became the owner of the crazy little bridal show that happens twice a year.
I love it. I think that's awesome. I too believe in giving without expecting. Just want to share knowledge with people. And I think that's awesome that you got a great blessing in return for that.
Yes. And she was great though, because, she sold it to me. And we kind of kept it on the wraps for a little bit, just being transparent, because we wanted to transition. We didn't want the vendors to be like, wait a minute, another person. But the blessing about it is I'm one of them. So I'm not somebody who hasn't been in the industry. I tell them all the time, I'm like, I still plan weddings. I do Bridal Ball is an extension of our business. I said, but I'm in the same shoes as you are. So we keep it affordable. And it's just nice because she stayed there to kind of guide me through the business side of it all and to transition me into it. And she's still a really trusted advisor. Like I'm able to chat with her if I need to financially, just kind of things like that, because she is a businesswoman and she's been in the, business industry and marketing industry for a really long time. So it was great to have that as a mentor going into this.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, how do you keep your soft skills sharp to complement all this amazing bridal and event planning expertise?
It's so funny because when you said soft skills, I was like, I have really had to think about that, because I truly think one of the running jokes in my household is, my husband says, you could plan an event with your eyes closed, gagged, and hands tied behind your back without sweating, fretting, going off, or any of that stuff. He says, but the children take you off kilter. And my rebuttal is, I've been planning weddings and events for 20 years and a mom for 9. So, that kind of thing. But, with soft skills, it's one of those things where you can't, I had this conversation just last week with the colleagues. I'm like, you can't teach, it's hard to teach grace. Somebody who'd be graceful and somebody to have people skills. People skills, I feel like some people have them and some people don't. Like, I think sometimes people are forced. And that's one of my soft skills that I have, that I'm innately, I care about people and I'm a servant at heart. And what I do is completely selfless. Like, it's all about my client and doing that. But as far as like some other my other soft skills, like communication, like improving communication, because as we know, communication, I may say something one way and somebody takes it another way. So I'm always, researching and reading that and learning personalities. My major in college was organizational communication, so that makes it a little easy because I know people's communication styles. Just adapting to how things go on a daily basis, because, I've had people come intern with me who don't like change. And I'm like, well, this is not the place for you, because that's a skill that you have to have it. And basically, keeping my skill sharp is like anything to do with leadership, anything to do with leading a team, any new way of conflict resolution. And also the ties are changing. So the generations are changing. So now, I have more millennials, which everyone hates to say that. Like, everyone hates to be called that, but our clients are millennials, and so I'm kind of stuck between. I'm in a sandwich position because I'm servicing millennials and their parents. So for the couples that are younger, their parents are really involved in their weddings, and my couples who are older, they're not. They're the decision makers. So learning just different conflict resolution and I love to read that kind of stuff that comes through, from Success Magazine or any of those kind of things. I kind of keep up with that stuff.
I love it. Conflict resolution skills, so key. Yeah, because navigating generations is real in any business environment. So, yeah, I think.
Especially with weddings, because, there was, most of the time, my couples that are getting married, their parents may have had a medium-sized wedding, but they really didn't have a say-so. Their grandparents really didn't have a say-so. I mean, there was a time where you went to the town florist and she'd be like, hi, Michelle, what color are your bridesmaids wearing? And they're like, oh, yellow. Okay, so you'll have yellow and white flowers. And it's like, insert bride and groom every weekend, it was exactly the same arrangements. Everybody had a buffet centerpiece at the country club or the local hotel ballroom. Like, it was insert bride. Brides and grooms didn't have a say-so. And so, or they have really little tiny weddings where they said, I do in the chapel, has some coffee, coffee, cake, punch, them little mints and little almond joy thingies, and everybody went in the fellowship hall and everybody went home. I mean, really, that's what it is. Like, most of my weddings, even the grandparents may have had that formal picture with everybody standing at the altar at the church or outside in the garden, but they have really simple receptions and very traditional. And so I always have to, I've literally sat between a mother and a daughter who fought for 45 minutes about a veil. And I said, she's letting you get married at a brewery. Put the piece of tulle on your head for the 25 minutes of that ceremony. And she was like, oh. I said, see, you have to give and take. So yeah, conflict resolution. I always tell people I'm Ayana Van Zandt, I'm Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz at times, Oprah.
The running list.
The running list of every like self-help person, like self-help guru that has to be out there because it just happens. And they all apologize. I'm like, don't apologize. Weddings bring out the best and worst in people.
Oh my goodness. Well, I know that, we're talking about conflict resolution, and I know one of the must-have skills in any industry, or really in your industry of event planning, is working well under pressure. So what are your verbal and nonverbal communication best practice to managing your brides, your events, your vendors? Like, do you have like a wink, like, in baseball, they have all the different signs? Like, what do you do to help keep everything going well under pressure?
It's funny you say that, because one of the things that, I've come to be extremely proud about with myself, my personal brand and my company brand, is that we've been told by vendors, which really, brides and grooms will refer you here and there. Their parents may refer you. You might get hired from them to do a baby shower, birthday party, or something like that. But the ones that keep me going in business and keep the calendar full are my vendor relationships and my vendors, or we like to say wedding professionals, but vendor relationships who refer us. And what I've heard time and time again over the past 5-6 years is you are innately kind. Like, you're not a fake kind, you're kind. So no matter what the situation is, they're like, you treat us well. And I said, my mom taught me many years ago. She was like, whether the person is mopping the floor or sitting in a corner office, you treat everybody the same. You treat everybody with kindness and respect, and always go into it as like, how can I help you do your job better? Or how can I help you today? Instead of like me. And I ultimately, I teach it to my team. Ultimately, the goal, even if that vendor is being nasty, ultimately the goal is two people married, starting their life together, and a happy bunch of people. Like, it's like a room full of smiling people and happy clients at the end. I don't care how we get there. We just have to get there. So, verbal and nonverbal, like, always staying positive. So I tell people, like, if somebody comes to me and says, Irene, XYZ is happening with this vendor, I automatically put on a smile, because I'm like, guess what? You could catch more bees with honey, right? So I always automatically put on a smile, and it's not fake. Like, I'm actually smiling, and then, and just have a calm tone, because I've had vendors go off on me, and I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't do anything to you. But I always go, you know what? Because at the end of the day, I tell people, I've been in the South for 20 something years. I said, but I'm a Bronx girl. So, so I was like, I do not want to bring that girl out. So let's add some southernness to it, and let the person vent, and how can we fix this problem? Now, if I get really quiet and sit in the corner and my face is beet red, nobody talks to me, because I just need a moment. Half the time I'm probably in the corner saying a prayer, like, Lord, hold my tongue and help me stay calm. Aww. That kind of stuff. But just I always say a calm tone, positive attitude, and smiling, because at the end of the day, everyone's stressed out. And what I've told other vendors before, I'm like, when you're the caterer, you have food to worry about. That's your world, that kitchen. You're the bartender, the bar. The florist, the flowers. As the planner, I take care of it all. I told a mom the other day who was like, well, why should I hire you? I said, because a wedding is a circus and I'm your ringmaster. That's it. Like, that is just, there's 500 things going on at one time. There's 3 rings going on at the 3-ring circus, and there's one person that has to manage all that, and that's me and my team. So it doesn't, and everyone's already high energy, high stressed out. They run the gamut of emotions. And I told my team, I was like, the last thing you need to do is be in your emotions and let your emotions come out. So staying calm and positive are 2 things that I feel, and those things could be verbal and nonverbal. So
I love the ringmaster of the circus analogy.
Because that's what it is. The zookeeper, ringmaster. But yeah, I tell people, there's 3, the circus, there's multiple things. It's like over sensory load. Like, there's 3 or 4 things going on at one time. And it's my job to know what everyone's business, which that's part of the nosy side of me and being the elder in the family, like the oldest child, that I just always needed to know what's going on. So this profession fits me to the T. Like I have to know everything about everyone's business, and it works.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
Yes.
Love it. Okay, Irene, from a logistics perspective of, keeping it simple, because that's key in what many people do, but really what you do, you want to keep it simple. So by keeping it simple is an unspoken, understood mindset of leadership. How do you teach your team to have the same mindset to execute that level of excellence that you want your bridal party to experience?
Mm-hmm. So, with the growth, I learned a lot, of course. So, we got our first intern who turned into a coordinator, who turned into assistant, who turned into a senior coordinator. And Shelby is her name. And I love her. She's been with me 4 years, and she's getting ready to leave me to go to school in Portland. But I'm not mad at her. She's getting her master's.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I told her she's going to find her husband out there, and she's laughing. But I told her that's what's going to happen. But yeah. So she came on board, and I taught by example. I'm like, just follow me, just shadow me, just watch what I'm doing. Like that was just my way of teaching. I mean, really, like just follow me, like hands-on, real world training, raise up your sleeves. We're learning how to cut cake today, because guess what? We have to cut cake today. Or guess what? The bride forgot to order a corsage for that godmother, and we're going to go in the back and make a corsage, and voila, So it was like a lot of that, leading and teaching by example. But as Shelby got better at doing that and learning kind of flying by the seat of her pants, really, she was like, when I promoted her to doing her own weddings, she said, okay, everything that's up here, all in your head, you need to put on paper. And when I tell you, I was like, what? No. That's not how it worked. Like at that point, I mean, I have my checklist, but the checklist is just for full because I know how to do it already, and I know what needs to be done in what order. So she was like, nope. So of course I did as much as I could for her to get her through. So like simple checklists and things like that. But as we grew, I realized I needed an SOP, which is a standard operating procedure. I needed a training manual. I needed to have, all the templates that we need to, to execute wedding, like timelines and all that other stuff. So that was the first thing. And I've learned that gives them peace of mind to be able to execute weddings how I want them to give, instead of just saying lead by example and just follow me. Because it wasn't like they were following me with the manual. They were just following me and asking me questions as they went. Now there's a training manual. There's a standard operating procedures manual. I just had a style guide created for my team, so everybody knows what to dress like for networking events and for setup and for meetings and for wedding days. Well, whether it's a formal wedding at Four Seasons or it's a wedding at the brewery, like what I expect everybody to look like on a daily basis because they're extensions of me. So I feel like that's helping them to, by giving them the tools that they need and actually listening to them and saying, what is it that you need? If you've been with me for 6 months, what else do you feel like you need to learn? What am I not doing to help you? I tell them all the time, like, I'm not perfect. I know what I'm doing, but I'm not perfect. And so and then they're younger. And I said, think about it. We are servicing your peers. I'm old school. Like, I'm old. I'm 40 something years old. We're servicing your peers. If there's something that we're doing that's antiquated and old, let me know so that we can change things. And we have. We've done. We are I would say we're 90% online, like completely automated. So everything from timelines and everything else is online. So I learn from them just as much as they learn from me.
So your biggest shift has been to Your biggest shift has been transitioning your platform to be more digital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that was a big shift because, for years, it's like a folder or a binder, and you had everything in there, contracts, everything's in there. But I had a really good friend of mine out of Nashville Nashville years ago had a huge flood. And for years, she was a planner. For years, she was telling all her vendors, you need to be in the cloud. You need to be in the cloud. And they were like, whatever. Old school vendors, everything was in folders. Well, Nashville got flooded and they lost everything. You could replace tables and chairs and linens and equipment. You can't replace a file folder. So I do both. I still like to write pen and paper. I still like to print everything out and have it in my binder on wedding day and on event day, but it still lives in the cloud.
It's all good.
All good.
A happy medium. You're finding your happy medium place. I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are a few factors that has helped you to keep up with the industry trends and establish quality vendor relationships? Like, I hear you. You're listening to your staff. You're going to different industry events and networking. But what's your secret sauce to establishing those type of relationships and just keeping up with what keeps you in demand as an event planner?
It's like our relationships are the most important thing. Because again, I get referrals from makeup artists, from photographers, from the caterers, from the venues. It goes on and on. We get referrals from that, of course, from past clients. But it's always nice, and the best thing is to when it's a business client that we've done a corporate event for, and they send us either their daughter's wedding or they said their friend's daughter is getting married, and they're like, oh, she does weddings too. That's always great. But as far as building relationships, I've always go into it as, how can I make your life easier? So if we working at a brand new venue that we've never worked at before, my team knows that. Okay, we've never worked here before, and we're developing a relationship, and we go into it saying, okay, how can we make their life easier? So, this past weekend, we had a wedding with a florist that we had never worked with, and I over-communicated everything because they are probably an hour and a half outside of the city, but they're the family florist and they're family friends of the bride. So they said, okay, we're going to use this florist. I'm like, you know what? You like it? I love it. Let's move it. And so we over-communicated with them, and she responded. She's like, we normally don't get this kind of communication. We appreciate you over communicating with us because it makes the day simpler. So same thing with the photographers that we work with. If we've never worked with that photographer before, we make sure we introduce ourselves. We try to make their job a little easier, make sure the timeline, and it's just working together and having a mutual respect. And that has helped us create really good vendor relationships. Now, we've had times where we work with vendors that we really don't feel, or they have a bad reputation. So that's definitely not a relationship we developed. But if it's a good working relationship and I know that vendor is going to fit another future bride, I definitely add them to our list of people that we like to work with. So we do that. As far as trends is concerned, most trends in the wedding industry is set by what's on the runway, what comes out in the fashion runway. There's a company, it's Pantone with Pantone. Some people say Pantone. They come out with the colors of the year, the fashion colors of the year, and they always do that for weddings too. And we all laugh because there's a time where it's like, oh, it's Merlot. I'm like, okay, it's burgundy, just a fancy name for burgundy. And this year is like ultraviolet or like shades of purple. So they take their cues from, Fashion Week and the runway, but they also, people look into like the Knot and Martha Stewart weddings and some of these bigger brands to kind of put the trends out, and then we all kind of follow through. We kind of take a little bit of both. I pay attention to what's out there as far as like the fashion and, when Megan got married and when Kate got married and we kind of look at that and see where, Kate got married on my birthday all those years ago, and Megan got married, and my daughter, we watched it because, of course, she's one of us, so we had to watch it. My daughter's like, she looks like me. I'm like, yes. So we watched it, and everybody watched it at the house because you just had to. But we kind of look at those too.
I was watching.
We were up watching that princess get married. Mm-hmm. So we kind of look at those kind of trends. But then I also, I was at an event that David Totera spoke one time, and I've met him a couple times, and something that he said that really stuck out to me. So you have to also look at your demographics, of course, but also your region, because most of the fashion and wedding trends start between LA and New York. So sometimes they start in New York, and then they kind of trickle to California, and then they finally trickle to the rest of the world. I always thought a few years ago, they have these things called Kena State tables, which are beautiful, long tables. They're 8x40. They're a really gorgeous table, and you bump them together, and you get these massive decorated tables. And for the longest time, it was like you could either get them in New York or California, and then one or two. One vendor got it. One rental company got it here in Atlanta, and now we use it all the time now. But it's kind of like they've moved on. California and New York has moved on to another table size. But also, something that we love to do and I love to do is getting to know my couple as people, and helping them, curate, design a wedding that fits them. And something that when people walk in, be like, wow, that looks like them. Oh my gosh, that's his favorite beer. Or yes, she loves purple. But also a wedding that reflects the two of them. Because when I tell all my brides, I say I like to meet the groom too, because you're not marrying yourself. So and they're like, great. I'm like, I know you think this is all about you, sister, but you're marrying this man who asked you to be his wife, and he has an opinion. Even the ones who say they don't have an opinion, they have an opinion.
Agreed.
And so, agreed. And we service the groom just as much as we service the bride. We take care of them, and they have their own checklists, and we take care of them. So just, we keep up with the trends and what's going on out there and what's popular in our, in the South and in Georgia. But we also just like to pull things together. If they're both eclectic and they want something eclectic, like how can we make that work? If they're both very conservative or traditional, how can we make that work? And then also, again, the generations, how can we make mom and dad happy on both sides? Because especially if her parents are paying the bill, that's we have to make sure that mom's traditions and trends, things that she's happy with, are comfortable with. We do that too.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Okay, so I want to go down memory lane a little bit with you. What is your favorite or most treasured moment as an event planner to date?
So to date, I have two. So a few years ago, Atlanta, if anybody knows anything about the South, especially Atlanta, we don't get snow often. So when we do get snow, it literally shuts down the city. And being from New York, I just find it so comical because, people are upset. They want the mayor and the state to have more salt trucks. I'm like, but then if the salt trucks just sat there for the what if chance that we might get some snow, then you'll be mad that those trucks are sitting there, right? So we had a snowstorm, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, and we had a storm, and then we had another one like a week later. It was like back to back. And I had a wedding, 190 people, at the time was our biggest wedding, like our biggest budget wedding. It was a huge wedding. We did everything, design, so soup to nuts. I mean, we were her full planning team. So we did rehearsal dinner and design. It was amazing. And it snowed earlier that week. And the groom called me up and said, you have earned all your money in this week. I'm telling you right now, because I was on the phone with Delta, Southwest, JetBlue, everybody who was connecting everybody. And when I tell you God was good, because everybody made it in. Every last 109. And I would say 75% of the guest list were out of towners. So from up north, Colorado, Florida, but we couldn't go anywhere.
Oh my goodness.
We woke up Thursday morning in a blanket of snow because it rained twice in 1 week. A blanket of snow, which was so stunning. And her dress was like a silvery white. I was like, Sarah, if I can get you in your dress out in the snow and get the photographer out here, these would be amazing pictures. Trying to calm her down. She had, almost had a nervous breakdown because she was like, this is a $1,000 wedding and I'm about to have to cancel it because of snow. And so we woke up Thursday morning with a blanket of snow. By Thursday afternoon, I was delivering gift bags to the hotel, and we had the Friday we had the rehearsal, and Saturday we had the wedding. And her dad was like, "It is amazing." The last person flew into Atlanta at 2 a.m. between Friday and Saturday and made it in. So that has been, because it was gorgeous. They were an amazing couple, William and Sarah. We just love them. They just had a baby about a year ago.
Fabulous.
I know. I keep track of my babies. They send me. I get Christmas cards and anniversary and announcements and all that stuff. So that was my favorite wedding from a few years ago. And then last year, I had the opportunity. One of my sorority sisters is a doctor, and one of her residents was getting married. And poor girl, she was like, "I have my venue, and that's about it. Like that's all she had." And so she hired us to do full planning, and she was one of those that showed me what she liked. And that was it. She's like, this is kind of what I like, the look I like. Here are the colors. And then that was it, Michelle. She just said, she's like, you plan it. I mean, she made decisions, but it was my favorite wedding because she trusted us 150% with everything. Vendors, everything. She, to the point where her final walkthrough, she wasn't even there. She was on the phone because she's a resident. So her hours were crazy. And then at the reception itself, they had, there's a restaurant here called Intimesno, and they do all kinds of amazing Italian desserts. And she had 10 different cakes. I mean, it it was really good. And I'm helping the staff make sure the cakes are ready for the cake cutting. And her dad starts thanking me. And he's like, where is she? Where is she? And I turn around and I have gloves on with frosting. And I'm like, hi. And he thanked me. He started cheering up about how much we did for his baby girl. And he was crying, thanking us. So that made me cry. So and it was just a beautiful day. And she was so gracious and so grateful that it's just made it, all the hard work worth it. So those are two of my favorite stories.
Love them both. Love them both.
You.
Now, I'm sure you have to reboot often from a personal perspective.
Yes.
So what is your self-renewal practice? Like, what do you do for self-renewal? What is your best practice for that?
I've gotten better at actually intentionally blocking off weekends where I'm just spending time with the family. In the summertime, I take less weddings, especially in August because it's back to school and my son's birthday and that kind of stuff. So I do that. And then I just try to be really hard to take time out for myself for a manicure, pedicure, massage, doing something. I also make sure that I get up in the morning and I do even if it's a 5-minute devotional and I'm doing my prayers, and especially on event days. Like I get up, have my cup of coffee in front of my big bay window. I'm like, okay, Jesus, we got this. Yes. You're going to hold the rain off until we get this girl in the church. And, that kind of thing. So, but just sometimes it's just vegging out at home. And it's like not answering my phone, not checking email, and just spending time with the family. And then, trying to meet up with a girlfriend or somebody else that I haven't connected with in a long time and just like having girl time or friend time. And then sometimes I just sit there by myself. Like I'll go take myself to lunch and get myself a manicure, pedicure. And I've gotten better at it. Try not to feel guilty about doing it.
No, don't feel guilty.
I know. It's hard because I'm always helping everybody else and taking care of everybody else. And I was like, okay, I need to have a time for it's me and not feel bad about it. And so I've gotten better at it now.
You're a worthy investment of your own time.
I like that. That's tweetable.
Yes, ma'am. You need to embrace that truth. That's the truth.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you deserve it. That's what somebody told me. One of my friends was like, you deserve it. You give so much to everybody else. It's okay to take, even if it's just an hour for yourself. Take a walk. Do something that you want to do. Read a book. Take a nap. So I've been trying to, especially on my days off, like after a big wedding, like Sunday. After the wedding this weekend, I just vegged out and did nothing on Sunday.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Sometimes you need that. Oh my goodness. Sometimes you need that.
You do need that.
Mm-hmm. Now, what advice do you have for those that want to have a successful career in event planning? Like they got starry eyes. It doesn't even matter about starry eyes. I think people should be starry eyed about their career choices. But
yes.
Whether they're young and trying to find their career or they're a little older and they want to make a career change, what advice do you have for them?
So the advice I have for them is something I always say to the young people, and I also teach at KSU. I teach at the Kennesaw State University here locally. I teach the business of a wedding planning. So how to start the business and all the details that goes on that. And what I tell my students is like, I planned events for many, many, many years for free. And not because of anything. Like initially I was like, there's not a career in this, is it? But there is. But it's getting that experience and finding your niche. Like I have friends that just do corporate event planning and wouldn't be caught dead bustling a dress or getting a bride down the aisle. Like it's just not their thing. I have a lot of friends like that. They're like, I don't know how you do it. I can't be her BFF for the next 6, 8 months, 9 months, a year. But I love it. I enjoy it. So, getting experience how you can. And I know in the wedding industry, it's really hard because a lot of aspiring planners want to shadow somebody or intern with somebody. And my colleagues love them to death. But a lot of my colleagues become intimidated. Like they become intimidated and don't respond to phone calls or don't respond to inquiries for somebody who wanting to intern them or shadow with them. But I say try to get as much experience as possible. There are programs out there. Get yourself a coach, a mentoring coach. I'm starting to mentor aspiring planners, and I love it. I've been doing it for years, and now I'm really officially starting to do it a little bit more. And so just getting your foot in the door. A lot of times I've known people that just started working in the catering side of it or the banquet side of it, and it kind of transitioned to something. But, doing your research, finding out who are the players in your area. Another thing that I tell a lot of my team who are coming on is to go to networking events. Because most industry networking events, there's a networking part of it and an educational part of it. So you're learning something, that kind of thing. So you definitely, I feel like, start off with educating yourself and finding out what market, like what part of event planning, because there's so many things. I mean, there's event production, where it's the big side of it, there's the rental side of it, there's decor, there's logistics. Like, I love logistics. I like walking into a room and figuring out where everything needs to be placed, where everybody has to be, when everybody has to arrive. And I make it work. Like, I love that part of it. I just love that part of it. So, and then I have people on my team who love to make things pretty. And they're like, I love to make things pretty, so I want to be the floral. I want to work with a floral designer and the design team. Like, fine, you love that, go with it. And then I have girls that are like, no, I just want to sit there with a clipboard and tell people where to go. So just finding where you fit in and what makes your heart patter. And honestly, the only way to do that is to start doing it, because initially you will work with clients you really don't like. And the only way you know which clients you like or what your niche is or what area you want to be is to kind of dab in all of it. And with time, you'll figure out your place in the event world. But also know that it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, they say Rome wasn't built in a night, and it's not. It's true. It takes time to develop your skills, and it takes time to be comfortable, especially when you're starting to charge people. It takes time to get comfortable with that, because I even still have issues with, like, are they really, like, I've put together proposals, and I'm like, wow, are they really going to pay that? And they do. And sometimes they don't. I mean, a couple weeks ago, we got 3 no's in 1 week, and my team was like, they weren't our bride, they weren't our clients. I'm like, you know what? That's right.
It happens sometimes.
It does happen sometimes, unfortunately.
And all is well.
Exactly. I'm still standing.
Now, Irene, I sincerely appreciate you being a guest on the Career Tipper podcast. And we end every episode with the guest sharing their favorite quote or affirmation that keeps them creating career tipping moments. So what is yours?
Oh, my gosh. One that I heard, and I don't know if it's cheesy, but years ago, the Gladiator movie. And so the gladiator said to the soldiers right before they went to battle, he says, what you do in life echoes in eternity. And, that's what it is. It's building a legacy for my family, but it's also, I had a vendor tell me today, it's also teaching the future generations, and even reteaching the vendors now on the best way to be gracious and kind and still get the work done. Like, we don't all have to be catty and whatever else. So, everything I do is going to echo in eternity. So I always think of that. And not only that, what we do, especially for weddings, they will be thinking about that and talking about that for years to come with a smile on their face. And that makes me feel really good. Like, I still think about my wedding 14 years ago, and family members still talk about our wedding 14 years ago, how much fun they had that weekend and how a great experience it was. And that's what I love. I love to be able to run into clients, the mall with their baby, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, happy anniversary, it was last week, right? And they're still like smiling about that day, 5-6 years later.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, please share how our listeners can get in touch with you.
Okay, good. So you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Tyndale Events, so ITYNDALE Events. And then if someone wants to email me if you have any questions, or if you're interested in just having a mentor or just picking somebody's brain for a second, you can reach me at itshandled@irenetyndale.com.
I love it. And you can find me, Michelle Beatty, at careertipper.com, on Instagram and Facebook at Career Tipper, and on Twitter at CareerTipper1. Please listen and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating. Thank you so much, and thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Career Tipper podcast. We're grateful for our listeners and guests. For more resources about how to evolve to your professional best, share your comments and feedback about this episode and your suggestions for future guests, visit careertipper.com. Until next time, be confidently you.